Start it up.
Hello, welcome to the video. My name is Tom and today we are going to be talking about diatoms. Diatoms are a single-celled algae whose cell walls are made of silica, which is essentially what sand is. They mostly form in brown clumps, long strings of these little cells. So you can basically say they're just long strings of crunchy boys. So what are they, what do they do, and why are they here? According to Rochelle Jagani, I'm sorry if I butchered your name, I probably did. They are responsible for between 1/5 and 1/4 of all the photosynthesis that happens in the ocean, which is a big old chunk. This means that they are a major contributor in the production of oxygen in the ocean and in the atmosphere. Without them, we would not see the diversity of life we do in the oceans, just because the level of oxygen wouldn't be enough to support them. In theory, evolution does its thing, I'm sure. Also, because they're photosynthesizing, they are pulling carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. So, in essence, they're doing exactly the same thing as our trees and plants are doing on the ground, our terrestrial plants. So they're pretty important to the overall ecosphere environment thing. So they're great for the environment, they produce oxygen for things to breathe and take out carbon dioxide, which we certainly cannot breathe. They're also one of the first stages of the food chain, so without things like diatoms, things like algivores and filter feeders wouldn't have anything to munch on, and if they didn't have anything to munch on, then their predators wouldn't have anything to munch on, until you work your way up and suddenly we've got nothing to munch on, so there's no us. No diatoms equals no us. It's quite simple. So without diatoms, filter feeders and algivores alike would not have enough to sustain themselves, letting crumble the foundations of the food chain that Mother Nature herself has perfected over millennia. But still, one question remains. Why is there so much fluffy brown shit in my aquarium? If I had a table, I'd flip it. So first of all, the brown algae you see in your aquarium isn't exactly the same as the stuff you find in the ocean, but they do the same thing. They photosynthesize, and they have cell walls made of silica. So for the purposes of this video, we will call them fresh crunchy boys. So where do these fresh crunchy boys come from? They're everywhere. There is not an aquatic environment around on this planet, give or take a few, without them, and usually they lie dormant. Environment isn't perfect for them to reproduce. Now, so it just so happens that a new tank that is still cycling, has just started cycling, is a perfect environment for diatoms to reproduce. That's why you see them mostly in new tanks. So it's obvious, fresh crunchy boys are pretty ugly. You don't want them in your aquarium, really, unless you're going for some avant-garde weird setup. I'm not going to judge. They're sort of a good sign. They're a sign that your water chemistry is undergoing the changes required to support livestock. Now, don't take this as I've got crunchy boys, I don't need to test my water. You need to test your water, because you can have crunchy boys with lots of ammonia. You can have crunchy boys with lots of nitrites. And if you don't know what those words mean, check out my last video. I did it about cycling. It's got those words in it. You will know what they mean. So as these diatoms appear in new cycling tanks, I like to think of them as the embodiment of the tank's teenage years. Just as we get spotty and a bit stroppy, our tanks get filled with crunchy boys. First, you need to make sure that you've definitely got diatoms insert quote, crunchy boys. So you should be able to grab a little clump and rub them between your fingers, and if they feel a bit gritty, you've got crunchy boys. If it's not quite so gritty, then it might not be Diatoms, and I haven't done a video on that yet, so bear with me. So we've established that you've got the crunchy boys. Fortunately, they are easy to remove to some degree. First stage of getting rid is manual removal. So you want to get yourself a toothbrush, you want to get yourself a siphon, and you want to get scrubbing and siphoning all that stuff out of there. You don't want that in. Best time to do this is whilst doing a water change. So you can be doing two things at once. You can be draining your water and sucking all the crunchy boys up. It's a win-win. This won't solve the problem though. You've got to find the root of the problem. Bad news is this could be anything. Anything. But I'm going to list them so you can work it out and find out what's causing them in your tank. So adding fresh sand to a tank can cause a massive spike in silicates, which is just a train wreck waiting to happen. These crunchy boys will make use of the excess silicates in the water and start to multiply. Eventually, potentially over between a few days to weeks to months, they'll use up all the silicates available, depending on how much sand you put in, and they'll just peter out and fade away into a void. You won't see them for a while. So one thing you can do if you're going to be adding new sand is to wash the sand. Put the sand in a bucket of water, then change the water, and keep doing that maybe 2 or 3 times to let the silicates be absorbed into the water. You remove said water, place with fresh water, so that when you put the sand into the tank, it's not throwing out the silicates left, right and centre. And if you're adding sand to an already stocked tank filled with things such as shrimp and snails, they should, in theory, take care of the diatoms before you've even noticed them, because they're always scavenging around. It's these little boys. High nitrates are another cause of the crunchy boys. If you don't know what nitrates are, again, check out my previous video. Nitrates are the result of the completed nitrogen cycle, and they're a good sign, they're a good thing to have. And they are nutrients for plants, and they are not toxic in low enough quantities to your livestock. However, if you leave it too long between your water changes, which we've all been there now and again, left it a little long, then nitrates will just keep building up, and again, this is a train wreck waiting to happen, because all the crunchy boys will come along and devour all those nutrients. So one thing you can do to combat this is consider more frequent water changes or larger water changes when you do them. Depending on obviously what you've got stocked. If you've got quite hardy livestock, you could probably get away with a large water change. If you've got more sensitive livestock like the little shrimpies, maybe up the water change count to twice a week, 3 times a week. Isn't quite so bad because you're only taking out little bits of water, so it's not like it's a big faff. Next we've got phosphate levels. Now I'm going to be honest, I only found out about the importance of phosphate levels when researching this topic. So if you've got a planted aquarium with fish in, the ideal level is between 1.5 to 3 parts per million. Now everything requires phosphates. We require phosphates. Plants require phosphates. So if you've got excess phosphates and what plants and animals you've got in your tank don't use them all up, algae will spring up to some degree. Now, the next thing to consider is your lighting. So usually if you've got high lighting, nice bright lights, green algae will outcompete diatoms for sure. If you've got too low lighting, then diatoms will definitely take hold. So to recap, crunchy boys like excess silicates, excess nitrates, excess phosphates, and lower lighting. But that doesn't mean just take everything out, change your water crap ton, and then blast your lights up, because then that's going to cause more problems. So one of the things you can do is to start using RO water, reverse osmosis water. This is basically pure H2O without any chlorine, you know, dissolved solids, all that kind of stuff. I think our water around here from the tap contains some silicates, and I've been using tap water just because it's easier to cycle the tank behind me, and yeah, it's obviously got diatoms, whereas the tank on the left, which is a bit more mature, and that's been set to about 6 months now, used RO water from the start and haven't had a crunchy boy blue sorted. So if you've got a fully cycled tank, it is suitable for livestock and you're getting algae blooms and diatom blooms for days, might be worth getting a cleanup crew. However, be warned, if you've heard of the term a dog is for life, not just for Christmas, a similar sort of thing applies. So make sure when you get a cleanup crew that you have their livelihood in mind. You want to make sure that once they've eaten all the diatoms and all the algae, that they have a food source. Otherwise, what will happen is that they will starve. So if you're getting shrimp, consider getting shrimp food. I definitely have shrimp pellets. So in my shrimp tank, I've obviously got shrimp, and I've got 2 Otocinclus catfish. All of them going mad for these. Absolutely love them. Just lay a little bit on the sand. Everyone swarms in, hoovers them all up. It's a great time. So there it is, what diatoms are, what they do, why we have them, and how to prevent and or get rid of them. If you like this video, give us a like. If you didn't, then don't. If you want to see more, subscribe. I'm enjoying doing these. It's been fun trying to think of topics to do, but I will do a video on filters and types of filters, but considering I'm having a bit of a diatom problem myself, I thought, why not? Thank you very much. See you in the next one. Diatom.